Hey everyone, how are you doing? It's almost December 10th, maybe it's December 10th by the time you listen to me talk here. This is exciting. So obviously Monday, Tuesday here, the market has not really done much. And, it's been kind of, some choppy waters, some calm waters, a little bit of both here mixed in. But essentially the S&P 500, everything's kind of, the S&P has been holding this 6,800 point range. And we're just not seeing a lot more happen here, and it's because we're waiting on the rate cuts. For investors to take the next big step into the market, they want to make sure 100%, because the Feds, they're hard to trust right now, especially with Jerome. And Jerome, I mean, not that he's like Kazikami here, but he's essentially he's about done with the job, and who knows, he could just come out here and hey, guess what? We're not going to do the rate cut. I don't know. Maybe he could do something crazy like that. But essentially, everyone's pretty confident we're going to see this rate cut tomorrow. And I would expect movement on the market. Now, this is where a lot of the arguing has started. I've seen, a lot in chat rooms, all this kind of stuff. But obviously, investors are waiting on the Feds. Feds do rate cut tomorrow. This is where a lot of people are going like, okay, the market's already priced in. I kind of don't believe that. Now, obviously, the market has strongly recovered. A lot of, from the MAG to small cap stocks, everything kind of there has recovered, obviously, from this, incredible collapse we just went through here the past month. But generally speaking, we could have a nice, really big bonus here in Christmas here with the market running very hot here. So I generally think that, if it's not by Thursday, Friday here, maybe going into next week, we could see the market really push here. And two, don't forget, Trump should announce, supposedly from what we've been told publicly, that he is supposed to announce the new person to take Jerome Powell's job. So, and like I said, I don't really think it matters who it is there, because we know they're going to be there to do what Trump wants. Trump wants rate cuts. There's some other little things they want to implement, but all in all, things that will drive the market up just on, those kind of expectations. So, yeah, I'm very bullish. I mean, and, obviously I'm drinking the Tom Lee Kool-Aid here, 100%. I mean, the man's been right all this year, even when the biggest investors, the biggest analysts were coming out saying like, no, this is an AI bubble, the market's going to collapse, recession talks, all this kind of stuff. We haven't seen any of that. There's no indicators for any of that. It's so opposite out there. It's insanely crazy that anyone would believe that right now. Now, there will come times in the future maybe when we can, those conversations will come up. It's the thing, like, if you've been through the market in the past 5-6 years, what a bear market looks like compared to what a bull market looks like. What these two things look like. Now, this year has been, I've been in the market for 10 years. This is obviously the best market we have ever seen here. This is crazy. But right now, there's still no signs of like, oh, this is going to slow down. It's quite opposite. We're seeing different gears right now at the market. And, I still think there's, like the Dan Ives guy himself says, we still got some gears to go here. So let's talk about some things and what possibly could be happening next. Friends, I hope you are well. I really do mean that. I hope everyone is fed, warm, and has everything they need for Christmas. I really do mean that. It's not easy out there, but the stock market, I think, is about to be good to us, so it could bring some really great, swing trades, option trades, wherever you're at in the market. I think a lot of us have been setting up some swing trades here. I know I have. I'm waiting for some things to happen here, and I think we're going to get it. It looks like, I think this market is showing signs of like, hey, we're just waiting on this last little bit of information, and then we're going. We are going. Talking about Richtech, honestly, I feel very good about what Richtech is doing right now. It's holding this mid $4 range here, and a lot of people comment and go like, why do you not consider other robotic stocks something to pay attention to? There are other robotic stocks that I'm looking at, but I feel like too, if I just bring a bundle of robotic stocks to, the conversation every day, it's going to be harder to keep up with all those. I kind of, in how I invest, obviously there, I think you're going to have great luck investing in AMD. I think you're going to have great luck investing in NVIDIA. Obviously, they're two very similar companies in that, that corner of business, but they still have a bunch of growth that you're going to get a part of here if you invest into them. The robotic market right now is a little iffy on a lot of different pillars of where certain companies stand right now. Okay. Now, obviously, there is no argument with this that Tesla will take the market with humanoid robots at first, obviously. And more than likely, in the long run, just like we saw them with the EV market, they will win. But obviously, there will be a need, a want in secondary companies that will do well in robotics. Now, like we've seen the EV market, there are other EV companies that have survived. They have come up. They're doing well. And it's probably going to take another 5-10 years for them to really solidify themselves into this, environment of EVs just getting more popular, getting, filtered out into the ecosystem of day-to-day society. But robotics, I look at that a lot of the same way here. And why I like Richtech is because a few different things here that I think that are maybe so obvious, but so silly too, because I think a lot of times in the market, what I've seen is silly things can make a lot of money. And one of the silly things and when I say silly, it means like, somebody being a smart butt and saying like, well, that's ridiculous. Why would that do anything? I think one of the big things with Richtech that I look at right now is I go, what are the obvious signs that could, just light a fuse with the stock? One of the big ones is the relationship with Richtech and NVIDIA. I've talked about this, but I think that is something you cannot shy away from. Jensen, the CEO of NVIDIA, what do we know? We know that, trying to map this right now is that Jensen, CEO of NVIDIA, is friends with Trump. What do we know about the Trump administration? The Trump administration here has already been vocal about the robotics market, essentially saying like, hey, the robotics market is going to be something we are going to focus on here in 2026. So I think what you're going to see, and this is kind of even goes with Tesla too, and obviously Tesla has money. That's the difference between Tesla and a lot of these other robotic companies. Tesla has money. They don't need investor money. They don't need, grants, big deals. They're going to do fine. What can we say here? They're the rich kids of the party here. These other robotic companies, they are generally trying to fight for what's on the dinner table here, obviously. And, I think that, like what I was going to say here is that I'm not even so much looking in 2026 for robotic stocks to like, there's going to be few that are making like crazy deals, big money, all this kind of stuff. I think more than less, what you're going to see at first with robotic stocks, and this is fundamentally why I look at Richtech right now, is because because we saw this in the EV market too, if you were there. What you're going to have first in this robotics market when this starts to get more popular, and we already saw a taste of this last week when this was announced with the Trump administration, every robotic stock just went bloop. When this gets announced that robotics are a hot commodity that they're getting looked at, maybe even, the Trump administration comes out and says particular ones that they're wanting to work with, and they start naming ones, for God's sakes. But what you're going to see is it's going to be a feeding frenzy. You're going to see stocks like Richtech who are not really making a lot of money. They're not. Like, I will be the first to tell you, I've said this time and time again, this is not a company that I am even expecting to make $5 million clean cut on a quarterly in the next years, like from what we can tell right now. Now, obviously, I'm hoping I'm wrong about that, but right now there's just no evidence to support like, oh man, Richtech, they're going to crush it next year. I'm hoping they just do okay to get across the finish line at this point. They're still very much developing, their robots, working on a humanoid robot. But one thing that I look at right now is that they could get named. Maybe they're one of the companies that get named because Jensen talks with Trump. Trump's probably asking, what robotic companies do you know about? What are you looking for? It sounds silly. It sounds ridiculous, but sometimes in deals, it's that simple. It can be that clear-cut simple right there. Sometimes investing can just be easier than what people make it out to be. It really can. So, like I said, I'm not expecting, besides Tesla, just because it's not fair, Tesla will probably make profit this year on Optimus whenever it comes to market. By this time next year, we'll have a clear-cut vision more of what that looks like. But I would not really expect any robotic company this year to make a ton of profit. I don't think that's really what we're looking at. I think what we're going to see first is a huge feeding frenzy, like I said here, where you're going to have stocks, maybe like Richtech here, who just run up to insane prices. You're going to see a lot of swing trades. You're going to see a lot of whoop off of news, off of people freaking out. Look at a lot of these data center stocks right now. Some of them still aren't doing that well financially. Some of them are. Obviously, Applied Digital is like completely defying gravity right now. But you're going to see things like that before we start to see money involved with quarterlies, contracts, even big contracts. I think you're going to see a feeding frenzy set in on a lot of robotic stocks. And right now, Richtech, yes, they have these service robots. They're focusing on that, and they're pushing a humanoid robot too here for the future. So, I think there's a lot to be said here with Richtech. This is why I think it's dangerous not to look at it. This is not me telling you to buy every piece of it you can. But what I am saying is I wouldn't forget about it. I would definitely watch it. Now, talking about the here and now with Richtech, if you're like, well, what about now, man? I definitely think there is a buildup happening in Richtech. It's holding this $4.30 range. Now, if we can see the market start to turn around here for the better the rest of the year, I say the year because it is, the rest of December here, I think $5 to $6 is hopefully the target price of where we could be with Richtech. That's what I'm hoping here. Now, do we hit that? It's kind of hard to say. We've got to wait to see what the market's going to hit here. But Richtech going back to $5 right now, I really don't think it's that big of a deal. I think we can. It's been trying to get to that already. We were close last week, and then we just lost steam in the market. So this is what happened during the last push up with Richtech, where we had Richtech just hitting these new humps, big pushes, littler sell-offs, and then big pushes. And it took a minute to get to $5 to $6. $7, it took even longer. Now, the last 3 weeks of the market here, could we see the market take off? Could we see a lot of these smaller cap stocks take off? I think that's a real possibility, obviously. There's still these two big things that could happen here where, tomorrow Fed's do rate cut. Somewhere in this month, we see Trump name the new chairman, and probably more than likely they're going to come out with a list of, the chairman's going to talk about what they're going to focus on, what they're going to do. They're going to pump up the market. I could not imagine whoever's going to take that seat is going to come out and start to say negative things. I would highly say that's not going to happen. Okay. I don't think, and what's going to be so interesting about this is because a lot of investors, think about this, a lot of investors, they've never had another chairman besides Jerome Powell. Isn't that interesting? A lot of people, if you're newer in the market, you're about to have a new Fed chairman who may be a little more bubbly. It's not going to take much. They might be a little more optimistic, positive on the market. We can only hope so. This is going to be an interesting year. I don't know yet what the theme of the market is next year. I think is a fight. Obviously, data centers are going to be a huge topic. Will they take the lead? I think they could for sure. But robotics, too, it depends how fast Tesla can get Optimus to market. I know that was kind of more of a broad conversation about robotics in general, but if you were there for the EV market, you're going, I know exactly what you are mapping out right now because I was there in the EV market, takeoff, where it seemed like everyone with $10 billion was starting an EV company, and a lot of them are just gone. And if they're not gone, they're probably not doing well. Tesla still, at the end of the day, has kind of come out to be the champion in that, and because they were ahead of the market. Now, I don't want to, if you're sitting here and you're going like, why are you so, you sound very bearish on Richtech. I'm not. I'm excited about Richtech. I'm sticking with Richtech because of who they're around, what's going on with them. And I do believe in this future that looks automated, that looks, I do think, this sounds terrible, but I do think that the service industry will be the first, place where you see robotics really start to make an effect on society, where, you see McDonald's, Wendy's, whatever it be, certain fast food chain restaurants where they start taking on robots. And, it's not that hard to think about. It's not like the robot even has to walk. These especially Richtech, their robots can just sit there, one right here, one over there, and there's just a conveyor, and it takes orders, makes it, and it just does what it does here. So it's not that hard to think of. This is going to be in our society within the next small amount of time, whether people want it or not. This is the next big market. It's robotics. There will be clear-cut winners. I don't know when we'll see this really take shape. It could be this year, who knows, but Richtech will definitely be in the conversation here, 100%. So look at BigBear here. I'm so just BigBear. I don't know. It's funny that I'm so interested by this stock, and BigBear is showing clear signs of a lot of support right now. Even with this market not giving much, not taking much, we're kind of just in this moment of just what's going to happen here. BigBear is doing so well right now, just playing around this $6 field. Now, obviously, it's clear cut that BigBear only wants to touch these $7-8 moments when we see the market do well, when the market's running high. And the last push on the market we had was in the beginning of October, essentially. Now, are we going to be going into that again here? Well, it's very much seeming that we could. There is a bull case on the market right now that it's going to do well here the rest of December here. So if BigBear, runs with the market, which, if the SP starts to take off here running with the NASDAQ and the Dow, it's going to drag everything with it. So I do think it's not crazy to say at all that, BigBear will easily touch 70. I mean, BigBear was at $7 last week, but it's not insane to say, if you're looking for a swing trade here, that we're not going to see it push back into 7, possibly 8. Now, with talking about deals, news, what we saw here last with BigBear about news with Swiss National Bank purchasing more shares of BigBear, that might just be the last little tidbit of information we had this year. Who knows? Don't know. But either way, that popped BigBear, and it just kind of gave more assurance that something special is right here. So there's not much more I can say on BigBear, and I don't think people want to hear me go over BigBear again. I'm so bullish on BigBear this year. I do think there's so many positives that they outweigh the negatives, and for everyone that is so maybe bearish on BigBear right now because of quarterlies, I completely agree with you. Listen, as much as I love BigBear, I am sitting here and I'm saying they gotta push it on quarterlies, 100%. They really do. The thing about when you look at the history of companies, there is no company in existence right now that from the Mag 7 to many companies that are going to be the new rulers in the next 10 years, and one's doing very well right now. There is no company in the history from the big lawn care in your town, lawn care company. There was one point in time where they almost went out of business, where they almost didn't make it, where things were bad, where it was slow seasons of growth, and then something changed. Leadership, deals, partnerships. In this year with BigBear, we've seen partnerships change. We've seen money, big money, with deals, more deals, tentacles reaching out. We've seen leadership change from the top to the bottom, from the bottom to the top. We've seen a lot happen here. We've seen BigBear implement the right amount of focus in their company. They spent $250 million on pushing, better software where they can compete with competitors. There's a lot of good things happening here with BigBear. So I think obviously the next big step with BigBear is obviously we want to see them continue to get deals. Obviously, I can't say obviously enough, but obviously they're going to get more of these airline deals. They are going after these airline deals, and this is something that Kevin, the CEO, hasn't really brought up strongly in talking about, but it's very much in this spotlight right now that BigBear is going after these airline deals 100%. I don't think it's by coincidence that they've gotten 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've lost count of how many they've gotten this year. It's been a lot. So the defense deals too. Defense deals are great because you don't know if they're going to be $50 million or $500 million. We just don't know what they're going to be, and that is the ace up the sleeve right now. Because even if BigBear just came out with a $100 million contract, that would change so much in where things are going right now. It would change so much. It would more than likely bring this $10 position to BigBear. Okay, so be excited, friends. I know that BigBear is a rough relationship because we're wanting more out of the quarterlies. Trust me, I do too. But thank God they didn't go the opposite way. Thank God, and I hope they can keep quarterlies, and they should, from what it looks like with the deals that they've received here this year. There's even just a couple of deals that are right after Q3 here, so I'm very positive that they should be able to keep quarterlies upward in this $30 million range. As long as we keep them up instead of going down, we're going to be doing just fine here. So, friends, I'm excited for tomorrow. Be excited. I hope to God it's not a bloodbath tomorrow, bloody Christmas here, and hopefully they do this rate cut. I think it's like, I feel good about the rate cut, but then it's, I just want Jerome Powell to go up there and say, here's the rate cut, and then immediately get off the stage. It's when he starts talking that you go like, oh my God. My fear right now is that they do the rate cut and then Jerome Powell says something, or Jamie Dimon, for God's sakes, he'll just do some random interviews here and there. And then we have to wait for the market to get cleaned up with Trump introducing this new person who's going to be the, Fed chairman. So I don't know. I like to think of the worst sometimes, although I try to be optimistic and positive as much as I can. But, Jerome has messed us up so much in the past here. It's worrisome. It's worrisome. Friends, take care of yourself. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everyone.